Welcome to Plain Talk, a podcast dedicated to bringing useful marketing, advertising, and public relations tips and information to small and micro businesses, nonprofits, and beyond. Hosted by the team at In Plain Sight Marketing. We're excited you're here.
Hello and welcome to Plain Talk. Today, Jordan and I are chatting about AI and what it means as a great disruptor in the marketing and public relations industry. I remember, Jordan, reading probably 3 years ago an article that said there will be technology that writes press releases and things. And as a PR professional, I was like, no way is that going to happen. And sure enough, here we are today. And there is technology at our fingertips, and it's free, that can write press releases. So I'm really curious, because we've been doing a lot of research on this recently, what you've read and what you think about it.
Yeah, so I think what started it all was our past podcast episode that we did was 2023 marketing trends. So actually in my research on that, I found a ton about AI. And since I'm kind of a new marketer, I didn't really have that much background to what AI is and how it can be used in marketing. So I got super curious because I was like, what is this? Because the article basically had two sections saying that it could ultimately change marketing this year by using AI, just helping write blogs, press releases, articles, just anything that you can think of. They were kind of saying that they think that this year is going to have more people using AI for their content, and that if you aren't using AI, then you're kind of behind. You don't have that advantage that other people are going to have this year if they're using AI. So I just kind of got wrapped up in like, whoa, this is very interesting, but also like, what could this mean and what does it mean? So I've just kind of come off of that, trying to just see what AI is and how people do use it in marketing.
So what did you learn? How are they using it?
What I learned was that they are kind of recommending it for just any kind of content, kind of saying that if you use AI to write your content or help you with your content, then it'll free up more of your time. Like you'll get just your time back every day, like because the computer's doing it for you. You don't have to sit down and write this blog. You just have to prompt it and then see what comes up. It said using it for social media posts, like captions, instead of spending all that time trying to generate like your own captions and content, just have AI do it. It was almost like any form of writing. They were kind of saying that you should try this year because more people are going to be doing it, and it'll give you an advantage to what you'll be creating this year. So yeah, I kind of said like, you should jump on this trend.
You know, that's interesting because over the last couple of years, we've tried a couple of different AI platforms. One was, it was a social media scheduling tool that if I had written a blog post, I could put that blog post into the tool, like upload the content, and it would spit out potential social media posts from my content. And while it was good for generating ideas that maybe I hadn't thought of extracting that one sentence and building a post around it, what I found was it didn't give me context. So I was spending a lot of time editing their suggestions for context around why are we putting this sentence out? Because by itself alone, the sentence didn't make much sense, right? And what that did for us was it helped us really make that piece of content work harder for us. I could take a piece of evergreen content. Let's say it's a story about pine trees, evergreens. And that's something that's fairly mild content that could be used over and over and over. And so I could literally schedule a social post every month for a year about evergreen pine trees. And by the end of 6 months or so, my calendar would be full of this innocuous content, right? So it allowed us to think further ahead for content like that. But at the same time, I was still spending a lot of time editing and so on. And eventually with that platform, we gave up that platform and moved to eClincher because eClincher had more robust analytics. I think we've done an episode on eClincher as a scheduling tool. And they have so much more robust analytics, and they just seem to fit better. So we gave up that little bit of usage on the AI, and I kind of miss it because I don't think that we always use our content as much as we could. And then the other instance was I was in Las Vegas for a conference on, we were helping the state of Nevada Department of Education and a whole room full of marketers to determine what the next 10 years of marketing education looked like in the schools. And it was a really cool conference. And I met a gentleman who had created an AI platform that generated social media posts for commodity businesses like restaurants, hair salons, and so on. So we tried this little nugget because one day I was walking past a team member's office and she was like, just going like this. And I asked her, what's going on? And she goes, I have to write another social media post about happy hour. I have written 500 posts about happy hour and I don't know what else to say about happy hour. So we tried this thing and it generated some fun content, and it was learning from other people who were writing about happy hour as it went. So as we were doing the work, it got a little better, but eventually it was the same thing. We spent a lot of time customizing the content. So why pay for a platform when we're doing the work anyway? And that was 2-3 years ago. So I imagine from your research, it sounds like that the technology has only gotten better.
Yeah, it seems pretty advanced. I mean, if it can just have one sentence and write an entire blog post off of it, just pulling content from resources like across the web, because there's so much on the web, I'm sure it can pull from many, many, many areas. But I'm also curious about where it's pulling from, and if you can ever find out like, oh, like here's this blog post, but where did AI get this? Like, is it Wikipedia? Is it like blogs? Like, I'm kind of curious just to know, like, where did this come from? How did they reword it to make it original content? Just like that kind of area of it just kind of like baffles me. I'm like, whoa, like, how do I wrap my mind around that?
Right. And how do you give proper attribution to your sources too is a question I have, because if I'm using somebody's research or somebody's knowledge, I want to be able to credit them with that information.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's so important whenever you use anyone's blog post or content. Like you want to give them credit because ultimately it's theirs. Like they wrote it, they probably researched it. So I don't know, like it doesn't feel like stealing or like copyright issues, but it kind of makes me a little nervous because you don't know where it came from. And like I really do want to know how much they alter it, like reword it to like, yeah, make it its own piece of content. So that whole part, I'm just like, I really wish I could dive into that more, but I'm sure the platforms don't really show you that.
Yeah, I don't imagine. I've tried a couple of platforms. I'm going to name drop here. I tried a platform called Jasper that I've been watching for probably the last year or so. They came out on Facebook advertising about having your content written for you. And I looked at it and I thought, I, as an employer, I pay people to do that. And the people I pay are really super smart and they're creative and they're curious and they dig up the facts and they attribute their sources. So I was not thinking I wanted to do that. But as this has hit the airwaves, gosh, when did ChatGPT release? Like in November. So since November, and this is now early February, it has been really the growing story. It's been all over the place. So I signed up for a free week of Jasper. I'll have to pay for it if I don't cancel it. And then I tried ChatGPT because it's free and it's open source. And so I wanted to see what the difference was. So I plugged in a couple of different things. And you know this, Jordan, you are writing content for a mechanical contractor and it's technical stuff. So you know how hard it is to come up with some of the information that you find and that you fact check it and verify the source to make sure it's a credible source, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like cross researching, making sure like, okay, this statement I'm going to find two articles that confirm that this is the correct statement, because I don't know anything about HVAC technology. So yeah, it's a lot of in-depth research on finding credible sources, using the like government resources that we have on clean air and all that stuff, but also, yeah, like triple checking to make sure that, okay, like this is the correct information, the correct advice we're going to give these people who are looking at us to be the experts on it. And then also having our wonderful client fact check it himself to make sure, like, okay, like this article is all the information that it like is correct, and it's what we're going to be telling people. So I spent a lot of time making sure that it is true.
Right. And so I ran the last, I guess we can say it, we're working on a piece on carbon monoxide in the home. And I know that you had a list of resources as long as your arm that you went and looked through. And the reason we do that is because there are HVAC contractors across the country. There are HVAC marketing companies specific to the niche of HVAC contractors. And they will put out the same piece of content across the country, whether it matches your geography or your environment or your culture. It's the same piece of content. And so when we run stuff like that past our client and he says, no, this is not at all what works here, or that's not my understanding of it, I'm really curious to see. I kind of want to run that carbon monoxide post past him that we did on Jasper and see what he says. It was basically around carbon monoxide detectors, but there's no way for us to go back and say, yes, we validated this information. And I think that's when you're talking about stuff like that, that's life or death for people, I think it's really important for us to be able to validate our sources.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And like, that is a good point, because he usually is very interested to see where we pulled our sources from, because he loves researching it too. So yeah, he's always wondering, where'd you get this information? Like the carbon monoxide was the CDC. So he was like, okay, like that's a good source. Like that's the CDC. So yeah, I guess if you can't present your client the information to see, okay, I pulled this together, this is where it came from, what do you do in that instance?
Yeah, I guess you would probably have to pull some of those salient points out and see if you could validate it on your own, because I think that's such an important topic that we don't want to leave it to chance that maybe it's not right. The other one I did, I ran through both platforms, was about the farm to table movement. We have a client that sells monthly ranch boxes that are full of locally processed, locally sourced, locally grown meats and homemade breads and jams and jellies and things from producers all around the region. And so I asked it to justify local meat processing facilities. And the first platform couldn't come up with enough that was not real salesy. And then the second platform came up with some pretty good points about the farm to table movement and why it's important to have locally sourced proteins, and the fact that they tend to be safer and fresher and all that kind of stuff, which we've been researching this client for 4 years. So we know that information to be true. But what I found was it didn't personalize it to our market, to our environment, our culture here in rural Nevada, where ranching is, it creates a desired environment for people to live in. And we have this heritage of agriculture, and none of that was addressed. So I could take the very clear points about the farm to table movement, and then I would spend some time to make it fit our hyper local, hyper regional market. What do you think about taking a piece that's been spit out by artificial intelligence and then making it better, or making it fit your audience? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it could probably pull some pretty good research, because it's scouring the internet. But I mean, yeah, like if it comes up with like some pretty good points that want to be used, or maybe like a few solid paragraphs that you're like, okay, like this can fit the tone that I'm going for, this has the information that I need, and then just adding like the personal touch to it, I feel like that could be like a really good way if like you're on a fast deadline or you just need to get it done, or it's like I am stuck on this topic and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to write about. I feel like, yeah, at that point, like using it to help you write the content, but then going back and like rewriting, adding that personal touch, like the humanistic element. Because I mean, even though like we write about HVAC technology, like that could be one of the most boring things you could ever read, but we always like try to add like a quirky little like intro and like little fun little sentences that make it like personable and like easier to read, because and like easier to understand because it is HVAC technology. So it's like breaking it down a little bit more to see like, okay, like here's an easier way of explaining this so more people will understand. So I think editing it and like making it your own, that's probably like, because like for everything, like some things that we do, like if you don't come up with it on your own, you just have to make it your own. So I feel like in that aspect, that could actually be a really good idea.
I think so too. And I think that's part of the intention of it, right? Is to be a prompt. So for writer's block, and for topics where there's probably myriad things you could talk about, but you don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know, which is why we spend so much time with this client working through an article that he wants to put out in his voice with his thoughts behind it. So I know that eventually you'll be able to say, make this sound like Jimmy Fallon, and it'll write something that sounds like Jimmy Fallon, right? So eventually there'll probably be that capability that gets down into the nitty gritty little hyperlocal markets like ours. And I love what you said about making it your own, because I think that's really key when it comes down to, this is not going away. This is progress. It's technology, and it is another great disruptor in our markets. You know, when newspapers took a downturn, it forced us to think differently about our industry. And here locally, when our 5-day or 6-day a week newspaper went to 2 days a week, our mentality around sharing information through the newspaper really changed, because we went from having 5 or 6 days of availability to 2, and making it even more difficult to reach people who maybe aren't on social media or aren't on digital platforms or so on. So I think this is another one of those things, Jordan, where we're going to have to think differently about technology and about messaging and about how we put this stuff out there, so that we don't sound like everybody else on the planet. And we are able to meet our people where they are and not serve up something that is designed to be published and get you on the top page of Google, where that's an awesome goal. But we're not going to run out there with a fistful of keywords and write some nonsense blog post just to place on Google, because I think going back to that work that you do for our client, is that we want to ultimately present information of value to our clients and our clients' clients. And I think that's the personalization piece.
Yeah, exactly. And I know like we both share a love of writing. We both love like getting that story. Like we can feel the itch, like, ooh, we want to do this. So it might be a difficult change for us, because it's kind of like, we love doing it. We love creating it. So it might like be hard for us to accept like, oh, maybe we do need like a little help writing this piece or a little help writing that piece, because yeah, just like there's this like the thrill of loving writing and then knowing that like you wrote this is yours. So it could be a difficult change for some writers out there.
I think so. I mean, I still get a thrill when I see my byline on a piece that I've written, because I know what I've done to make it just perfect, right? To get it to that point of where somebody actually wants to publish it. So So I think there is some little sense of loss in that, that maybe it isn't 100% mine. And then I think there's a little sense and loss in thinking about all the pieces that are 100% mine that are feeding somebody else's computer generated stuff. And I think that there's a little bit of thinking there too. I'm a prolific writer. I've been doing this a very long time. Someday you'll have as many bylines as I have. I promise you will, because you're an awesome writer. But it's weird to think about that my content that is out there for everybody to read, which is the intention, is for everybody to read it, is now fueling somebody else's writing. And so I don't know. It's a kind of a weird thought.
Yeah, it is. I know, like the discussions everywhere right now, and like I'm only a year and a half out of school, but I would kill to be in the Reynolds School of Journalism right now, listening to a discussion on this with like professors and students, because I would love to hear what they have to say as professional journalists and professors of journalism.
We should have Todd Phelps and talk to us. That would be so fun. He's so fun. I love him. No, I think you're right, because the next generation, and it's weird for me to think about that for you, right? Because you studied in a more traditional format coming through college a year and a half ago. Now students are coming out with this whole different way of thinking about writing. I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about. And like, it's only been a year and a half. Like, I wonder if even like curriculum has changed to kind of include this stuff, or if they're learning the same things that I learned, or if it's just so quickly changing, like right now at such a rapid pace. It's very interesting to think about. And since chat just released in November and it's February, it like, where will we be at the end of 2023? Like the marketing predictions article, some of it I read and I was like, oh, that's not going to happen in a year, but it probably could.
Well, it's funny because in my research for today, leading into this conversation, I was reading a lot about school districts that are either banning it or are trying to explore how to incorporate it into their lesson plans. It's a really great point, because if you ban a technology, the argument goes, you are hamstringing your students so that they won't be ready when they hit the real world, right? Like if we teach them how to count on their fingers and toes, then we're not showing them what's really happening out there, right? But they have a skill that they can use. So I think writing is one of those skills where I think we need to encourage it in a way that they write their own and they own their own content, so they know how that feels, because it's a big feeling and it's a big responsibility for us as writers and representatives of our clients. It's a huge responsibility to make sure that what we're putting out there is right. But I think if we don't show them how to use the technology in a way that strengthens and bolsters their writing, we're also giving them not a great start either.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've definitely, even in high school, like, why are we doing all this math when we have the tool of a calculator? Or in my design classes, like, why am I designing AI when Canva is a tool that could easily do it for me? So it's like, there are tools out there that will help you like skirt around doing like the work yourself. But there is something about like learning the work yourself, doing it yourself. And then once you're out of school, saying, oh, okay, there's like some tools out there that can help me with this, but I'm also glad that I learned how to do it myself while in school, Like I've definitely heard like, yeah, just like there's tools out there that can help you, but we have to do it this way, but like there's tools out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think using it as a tool is a great strategy. And I'm heartened as a senior practitioner, as they say, to hear you say these things, Jordan, because we do have a huge responsibility as marketers, and whether we use the tools or not to enhance our work or assist our work, it's still our responsibility to make sure that what we are saying is true and good and accurate and represents the clients that we work with.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's just such an interesting thing to think about, like just us incorporating using after doing it one way for so long, like new technology coming in, I guess. Like now I know how other people feel. Like I'm not old, but now I'm like, whoa, like I'm not up to date with this new technology at all.
Yeah. And boy, you mentioned design technology, and that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. And I feel like this is not, like I said before, it's not going away. It's definitely something that we're going to continue to monitor and experiment with. I want people to know that anything that we generate through AI and that we are assisted with, we're going to have to figure out the byline for that piece, right? If it's not 100% mine, how do I claim it as 100% mine without saying that this was assisted with AI? Because I think that's, think it's important for people to know. I spend a lot of time scrolling through news stories, usually with my dog and my couch and my blankie and my coffee in the morning. And you can almost always tell the content that was generated by AI because it's not personalized. It's usually some kind of article that you have to scroll through 15 pages of ads to get to the point, and you get to the point and it's very disappointing because it really wasn't the point that they hyped in the headline anyway. So I think that people are going to be able to tell what has been AI generated and what's not, and what has that personal touch to it. But it's a really fascinating subject, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to talk more and more about this as we go.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to definitely keep up with articles and research and new developments in it, because it's just been popping up around without me even researching it. Like email newsletters, that's a hot topic right now with other marketers. I've gotten a few in my inbox already. I've seen shared Facebook posts about AI. I've even seen it on TikTok. I've watched multiple TikTok videos on people discussing AI on that platform. So it's interesting because after us talking about it initially and then us finding our research initially, like it's just been popping up everywhere for me. So I'm hoping that I'll continue to see it organically and also dive into some research and see what happens with it.
Well, and there is the whole deal, Jordan, living our core values. 100% curious AF, tenacious AF, and creative AF. And from a creator standpoint, this is both terrifying and exhilarating. And I can't wait to talk to you about more of this as we go.
I know. We'll definitely be back on this topic for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you. No, I know we could talk for hours about this because we already have.
All righty. Thank you. You've been listening to Plain Talk About Marketing, and we're so glad you're here.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with your colleagues and peers. To get show notes and listen to more episodes, visit our website at IPSMLLC.com/category/podcasts.